Do you want to go to my personal page as well?
Good morning. We are live. Hey, Tommy. Good. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share this live to my page, and I don't know how to share it to your page.
Okay.
Let me see here if I can figure it out. I don't see it.
It's all good.
Do you know how to share it live to your page?
I do not, but nonetheless, we will perhaps share after the fact as a replay.
Well, we'll definitely share after the fact. Okay, so here we go. So Tim Westbrook. Good morning, everybody. We are here on I Love Being Sober. I'm here with Tommy Rosen, and I am just so grateful. So grateful to be here, and so grateful to be here with Tommy. And I've been following Tommy for a long time. Tommy's been around forever. Tommy's a yoga instructor, Kundalini instructor, and he walks the walk, and he's a great example of a man in recovery, and his story includes a lot. It includes a lot. So let me see here. Needless to say, right, Tommy?
Needless to say.
So today I'm here with Tommy Rosen, and the topic is you can't just focus on not drinking and not doing drugs. And the reason why I decided on that topic was because I remember meeting Tommy. Tommy, you and I met back in, I think it was 2016. And I read your book, Recovery 2.0. And I remember in your book, you talking about all of your first 12 years of recovery, which we're going to get to that, but your first 12 years of recovery were, I guess, more along the lines of being a dry drunk, where you engaged in all of these alcoholic behaviors, and then something happened, and you were able to change, and your way of life today is much different. Another thing that I remember, because I was in the middle, I don't know if you remember this, but I was in the middle of, I was training for triathlons at that time. And I just remember how badly my body hurt. And you said, it's because you're inflamed. And I was like, what? And when I used to think of inflammation, and I think I'm not the only person that when we think of inflammation, we think of taking ibuprofen. We don't think about the fact that the foods that we put in our bodies are causing inflammation as well, or promoting the inflammation. So it's like, that was the first time I'd ever heard anybody say, you need to eat foods that are anti-inflammatory. And it's like, oh, what a concept. So I'm going to read a little bit about Tommy here. Tommy Rosen is a yoga teacher and addiction recovery expert who has spent the last 2 decades immersed in recovery and wellness. He holds advanced certifications in both Kundalini and Hatha Yoga and has 29 years of continuous recovery from drug addiction. Tommy is the founder of Recovery 2.0 Global Community, the Recovery 2.0 Online Conference Series, and the Recovery 2.0 Group Coaching Program. He leads yoga retreats and workshops internationally and presents regularly at yoga conferences and festivals. Tommy's first book, Recovery 2.0 Move Beyond Addiction and Upgrade Your Life, was published by Hay House in 2014. Tommy and his wife, yoga teacher Kia Miller, live in Topanga, California, where they grow organic vegetables in their backyard.
Right back there.
There you go. It's so good. It's so good to see you, Tommy. Thank you so much for being here on our show, or on my show.
Thank you, Tim. I'm truly grateful. Thank you for asking me.
So this is a live show. So anybody out there, if you have questions for Tommy, please post your questions in the comments section. We can see your questions. And then if you know Tommy, if you like Tommy, if you agree with what he says, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment. And so with that, let's dig into it. We're going to find out a little bit more about Tommy and how he got to where he is. So Tommy, tell me, so where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New York City.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
right in the thick of it. 1970s and early 80s, growing up there.
Okay, awesome. And then what brought you out to Arizona or to Topanga?
So I moved. It had always been a dream, actually, to go to California. I was a New York City kid, and I was like reading skateboard magazines, and I was like getting tastes and little like glimpses at this thing that was going on in California. And in my New York City shelteredness and that lifestyle in New York was such a contrast to what I was experiencing. I was like, ooh, California.
Yeah.
So I moved to San Francisco in 1991 at 60 days sober.
Okay, so I think I skipped ahead. So tell me about your tell me about your drinking and your drug use. Like you grew up and how you grew up in New York City and siblings, parent. Like, tell me about your your
I grew up. My mother and father were divorced when I was 1 year old. And I grew up with my mom. My father was very, very present in my life as well. He also lived in New York. I have two sisters, two amazing sisters. And I wouldn't have said they were amazing in my childhood. And they wouldn't have said I was amazing in my childhood.
Right.
We fought a lot. We had a lot of struggle in our house. And I would say that we had a broken home and a lot of confusion and tension and stress and trauma. And so I grew up in that situation, and I had everything materially that you could ever hope for. I didn't want for things, but there was always a sense that something was wrong. There was an underlying sense that something was always amiss. An anger, a tension, bitterness, coldness, distance, something unresolved always. And that became a very difficult energy to be around. And I think that I spent a lot of time in my early adolescence when I first started to drink and smoke cannabis and get involved in drugs. It was really an effort to experience something different. I think people drink and use for different reasons. Some people really do want to obliterate themselves. They want to be numb and they don't want to feel. That was not me at all. I wanted to experience life. I wanted to experience adventure. I wanted to experience something different than this tension. I really wanted to be free. And so the first way that I found where I could truly release some of the tension in my mind and my body was actually cannabis. I smoked pot when I was 13 for the first time. And I remember the feeling of being high very clearly. And there was a sense that I could breathe, like really take a deep breath for the first time in my 13 years. That I wasn't in my mind tense in that moment. There had been a release. And it was fantastic. I mean, I had never experienced anything like it. And it was what I really had wanted was a calmness, a release, like the mind can just quiet for a minute. And cannabis gave that to me. And it was wonderful. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. I have the power to do this, to change the way that I feel. And all I have to do is smoke some of this pot and boom, I finally have some control in my life. Like I can do something about my reality. It was really amazing. So if you think about that as a setup, why would that person ever stop using that substance?
Right.
Why would you stop? You would only stop if it became such a problem that you could no longer continue. because the consequences of using it would become so detrimental and so counterproductive to that very same freedom that you had been seeking that it gave you, that you would eventually have to stop. And that's exactly what ended up happening about 12 years later. So my using, from smoking pot, drinking, later on, a big foray into psychedelics, later on, big foray into cocaine, crack cocaine, and then ultimately heroin. That whole cycle, that whole experience in my life of experimentation and abuse, ultimately abuse of my body, my mind, and with drugs, that would last 12 years till I was 24 years old when I finally got sober for the last time.
When did you realize that you had a problem?
Cocaine. Cocaine is the thing that showed me that I was in trouble. I recognized this thing was bigger than me. I even knew it while I was using. I had no denial about that. I was like, oh my God, this grabs my nervous system in a way that I really can't combat it. I can't stop using this. And so where I was in denial was in the in-between periods. So if I got on a run with Coke for a couple of days, I'd feel so terrible and so horrible mentally, spiritually, physically, in every way. And I wouldn't do it for maybe 3, 4, or 5 days. And in the 3 or 4 or 5 days, I would sort of recover. And I would say to myself, I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And then right around day 3 or day 4 or day 5, this thought would come in. You've been off this stuff for a couple of days. It hasn't even been on your mind. Obviously, you're okay. It'd probably be okay if you did a few lines tonight, and there you go. There's your addictive thinking. There's the pattern being built into the mind and body. And if you repeat that pattern 1,000 times, which I did, it becomes almost impossible to overcome.
Right. Isn't that interesting? You think it's been 3 or 4 days. I'm totally good. Like, I'm not addicted because I can stay clean for 3 days.
That's right. I've proved it to myself.
Like, I can totally stay clean. 3 days. It's been 3 days. I haven't even thought about it at all. Yes.
Well, a person in that mindset that I was in is asking themselves the wrong questions. The question is like, can I do this and not have my life implode? That's not a very high grade question.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I hold it together just enough?
Yeah. So that I can use this drug.
Right.
Because I like the feeling of it. I like the numbness of it. I like the false sense of power that it gives me. I like the high of it. But I hate my life.
Yeah.
And I don't like myself in general. And I'm not slowing down enough to get to know myself in any way. And so the focus is on the drug. And why that's so relevant to our conversation today is because you've chosen as a topic for our discussion, you can't just focus on not drinking or not doing drugs. And the irony there is that when you're in active addiction, at a certain point, all you're focusing on is the drink and the drugs. That's sort of in the back of your mind at the very least all the time, is this sense of, well, this is how I get through my day. This is part of my life. This is part of who I am, and part of my story is that I use drugs, and I love it, and it's great. And I surround myself with other people who use drugs, and I live a kind of lifestyle that supports me doing drugs. And that becomes the front focus, bigger than anything else eventually. And yeah, I recognize it's important for me to go to school and to get a degree, and I have to go to class, and I have to show up, and I need to have relationships, and I need to speak to my family, and I need to kind of tend to my physical health, but I'm not really doing any of those things very well. because the paramount thing in my life is the focus that I've placed upon drugs and alcohol as the thing that's the most important thing, that relationship above other relationships. So when you get sober for the first time and you really are trying to recover, it makes sense to me that in that beginning stage, you would be focusing on not drinking and not doing drugs, because that's all you've been focusing on is drinking and doing drugs for the last days, weeks, months, and years of your life. So the point is that recovery happens in stages. And in that first stage, for sure, it's very important to recognize that the thing that I'm doing today, the thing that I need to be mindful of, is not picking up. I need to go to bed tonight not having drank and not having used. And if I could just do that one job, I will have had a successful day, even if the day was difficult for me. And what I'm being told by people around me in recovery, people that I admire and whose lives are going very well, is that the first thing you have to do is you have to put some distance between you and drugs and alcohol over time. So one day at a time, yes. And then you're at a week. And then you're at 2 weeks. And then you get your 30 days. And what's happening is biologically, physically, you're detoxing. Emotionally, you're detoxing. Naturally, you're sleeping in a more regulated way. You're eating 3 meals a day, something that you don't do when you're doing cocaine or heroin. You're going to the bathroom regularly, something you don't do when you're doing cocaine and heroin. You're starting to take care of yourself. Maybe you're even exercising a little bit. So naturally, you're starting to feel better. But the initial focus is, I just have to go to bed tonight, not having picked up. And if I can do that for a string of days, my focus will shift and change. My life will grow. Different things will be necessary at that point in time. But first, I just got to put some time together.
One day at a time. 1
Absolutely.
hour at a time, 1 minute at a time.
Yeah.
If you get the urge, you pick up the phone, you call your sponsor, you go to a meeting. I mean, it's just like whatever you can do. Now, as we're talking, I'm just thinking about, it's like whatever you put your energy into, is grows, right? So it's like putting your energy into not drinking and not doing drugs it makes sense that it can only be a temporary solution, right?
It can only be a temporary solution for the person who is expanding,
Right.
growing. If you're not moving forward at all, then you're going to continue to be stuck in that way. And so as we talk about building a life, fulfillment in life, having purpose in life, improving your relationships in life with people, having meaningful employment in the world, something that you engage your energy in that brings you joy, the way you relate to your body, the way you relate to food, the way you relate to nature. All of that is where the joy of living is going to come from. So of course, at first we get off of drugs and alcohol and we focus on that's the main thing. Eventually, and if you're working the 12 steps, if you're blessed and you have the willingness and then a guide, a sponsor to take you through the 12 steps, if you're blessed in that way and you really do that work, then you're going to start to, your intellect is going to come online. There's going to be an alignment spiritually that takes place for you. It's the thing that you actually were always looking for. Like, that's going to start to show up in your life. You're going to feel better. And when that happens, new kinds of challenges are going to come up. Relationships are going to be challenging, whether they're familial or business or romance. You're going to have to face aspects of yourself, insecurities or fears that you're still holding on to, ways of behaving that are still ingrained in you. Like you mentioned at the beginning, Tim, I really struggled in many ways for the first 12 years of my recovery. But it's very important for people to hear that I didn't struggle with drugs and alcohol. That was gone. That struggle was removed for me through the 12 steps. And I remember waking up one day and realizing, I don't know the last time I actually thought about using drugs, which was a tremendous thing for me to realize. So important. And that's what I wanted, was I wanted to be free. I didn't want to live a life where I was always trying not to use. Well, I woke up one day and I was no longer trying. It had just been taken away from me. I was free.
How far along was that into your recovery when you just didn't think about drinking or using?
I'm putting it at about 9 months for me.
Okay.
Like somewhere in there. I started to work the 12 steps out of the book, guided by a sponsor who really gave me his time. He really gave me his attention, his support, his love, his time. And he answered my questions and he guided me through the process. And, I was so concerned that I wasn't going to get the gift, the thing. I'd been using drugs for so long in my life, more than half my life at that point. And it was like, the only way I know to have a release is by engaging with drugs. And I understand from other human beings that there are other ways to become happy, content, truly free. But I had not yet experienced those ways in my life. And this is the dilemma for newcomers, is if you're anything like me, you've only had glimpses of freedom, and usually it had to do with drugs or alcohol, or maybe sex, or maybe, some other form of acting out. And if that's all you know for how I can become a content individual, then the spiritual path, which is leading you actually to true and real authenticity and contentment, is going to be fraught with doubt. You're going to doubt it at times. You're going to be like, is this going to work for me?
Right.
Is this going to work or not? Because, man, I am being asked to do a lot of things here. And of course, doubt. I think in the final analysis, doubt is probably the most corrosive element for anybody who's trying to get this thing. Because if you doubt it, really, like you're like, I don't think this is going to work for me, it isn't. So somehow you've got to be around people who are examples of victory. And they have to imbue that, they have to give you enough faith that you stay out of doubt long enough. You do the work, you start to experience the shift, and this tremendous transformation takes place for you. You think differently, and you have moments where you're just content. Now, I had many of those moments in my early recovery, many, many. And I still had a lot more work to do, a lot more.
Yeah, it's like we all want to be happy, joyous, and free. And prior to getting clean and sober, it's the rush, it's the adrenaline, it's the dopamine hit, it's the Facebook like, it's the acting out, it's the cheating, it's the lying, it's the stealing. Like those are the things that provided the high. And so for us, so that's what we associated with being happy, right? Was that rush. So I mean, it's like how to turn that, how to flip that to being happy with just being of service and helping others and taking care of ourselves, right? Doing things that help us and doing things that help others be healthy and happy and not cause pain to ourselves and to others. So your first 12 years, tell me about your first, well, and first I just want to mention one thing. I was at a Genius Network meeting with Dave Asprey last week, and he said, suffering reduction doesn't sell shit. And I thought about that, and it's like when it comes to being an alcoholic or a drug addict, just that's similar to just focusing on the not drinking, just focusing on the not using, so that I can stay out of jail, stay in relationships, keep my job. It's like, how is that even desirable? Really, it's like, to your point, sticking with the winners that are living happy lives. It's like, get clean and sober so that you can turn your life around and start kicking ass. Turn your life around so that you attract amazing people into your life, and so that you live a happy and fulfilling life.
So I'm just going to go in right here.
Yeah.
Selling shit is not going to be the path to happiness.
Right.
That would be my response to Dave. If that's your focus,
right,
you can find success financially and you can find success in the business world. But if you mistakenly associate that with happiness, then you will go down the same rabbit hole as all those other wealthy people and successful people who never ever learn to sit with themselves. And that is at the root of this thing called addiction. How are you with you? And I mean, really, how are you? How much time do you spend chasing nothing? How comfortable are you just being? How comfortable are you in your physical body? How comfortable are you in your relationships? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with pursuing abundance, financial success. But if your financial success to you equates happiness, you will be sorely, sorely mistaken. You will learn that. And there's nothing wrong with learning that.
Yeah. And just to clarify, wait, it was a marketing meeting that we were at. So that was, so the whole point of it was to sell stuff. I was relating it to, it's just how to make recovery desirable is more so what I was aiming at, was like how can this thing be more attractive to people that it's like, hey man, like life is better over here on the other side. And it's not, it's having a good job. It's more, to your point, being in good, healthy relationships. It's enjoying hobbies and interests that are fulfilling. It's so that's more of the angle I was aiming for. I think
I know exactly.
Right.
I really do know what you were talking about, and I feel like I wasn't not addressing that.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is, and I love the Genius Network, and I appreciate Dave Asprey and his work in the world, and I appreciate Joe Polish very much and his work in the world, and on the deeper level, you and I are having a conversation right now about freedom.
Right.
And this is about freedom from addiction, but this is about freedom. And so what I would say to anybody, whether they were at a marketing meeting and the whole point is to sell stuff, and I get that, I'd say, let's all just remember that we had better be thinking about the mothership, the planet Earth, as we're selling things. And then that's the highest priority, obviously. The second highest priority is we better be thinking about the products and services we're selling to people need to be good for people. After that, we can really say to ourselves, we're being of service. We're adding something to, rather than detracting from. And if you don't have that in your recovery, then you will behave like I behaved many of the years of my first decade, which is chasing. I'm chasing after something, and it's painful.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting myself above it. What I'm saying is we have to wake up to a deeper level right now. So people listening to this who are in recovery, for them, depending on where you are in your recovery, for you, it might just be go to bed tonight sober. And that's enough. That's a fantastic thing. You know what that is? That's an act of self-love. And from that act of self-love, then you can begin to love, period, in the world. For other people further along the path, it might be, well, I no longer think about drugs and alcohol. How should I spend my time? Well, it's pretty clear. It's been worked out by the masters, the real true masters in life, the teachers who have taught us how to be content and happy. You have to have a practice. You have to learn to meditate. You have to calm your mind. Otherwise, we'll never get off the hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never get off of it. So everybody's an addict in this way, in the way that I'm describing. Not everybody implodes their life with drugs and alcohol the way I did. But if you're not getting off of this hamster wheel and you still think, if I have enough money, if I get the right girl, if I get the right guy, if I have the right toys, if people think of me the way I want them to think of me, then I'll be happy. You will never get there. And so the most important thing for people to realize is we have to stop the chase. And we have to come back home to the heart. The home office is here. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So what was it like that first 12 years for you? What happened? This is it's about your life and then what happened to get clean and sober. What for your first 12 years? And then what happened to where you realized you had that happiness and that you needed something different?
Yes. Thank you for the question. So what happened was I paved a road to my next bottom. I had experienced a bottom with drugs and alcohol. That was the first bottom. And then I got sober. And then I found true recovery. I recovered from alcoholism. I recovered from drug addiction. Those ceased to be issues in my life any longer. But the reasons that I ultimately abused drugs and alcohol were not because of the drugs and alcohol. They were because of real issues in the way that I thought and saw the world. My behavior was the issue. My thinking, my beliefs, these were the issue. This is where I had to change and grow to another level, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't even know what I'm telling you right now. So I experienced an unbelievably painful bottom with codependency. Romantic attractions had been a problem for me for many, many years. And then I got involved with a person, and I really just went downhill. I lost myself in this relationship, and it was so painful. And I also was in a terrible relationship with money and debt, had huge debt, and I was gambling. And that means that I was still acting out in terribly addictive ways. And I was amazingly stressed. And I carried this stress in my body and in my mind every day, even though I wasn't aware of it. Even with my yoga practice, even with my therapy, I didn't understand fully the addictive nature of stress and how it maybe was with me my entire life. And it was time for me to learn to put it down. And that was the process of reaching my second bottom. And out of that second bottom came the new lesson plan. For me, the more advanced lessons, the next level. And that's how Recovery 2.0 was born. Out of the work I did with a teacher that I found, a yoga teacher, my teacher, called Guru Prem. Guru Prem is a man, he lives here in Los Angeles, and just about as fun and kind and available human being as you could imagine. And he taught me how to breathe. He taught me how to move and practice yoga in a different kind of way. And he presented a vision of a life beyond stress. But I would have to get to know myself. I would have to slow down.
So before we continue moving forward, I think it's important to tell people like the story of what happened at the bottom. And I remember reading Recovery 2.0, and I remember reading the story about you in Vegas. Would you consider that kind of your bottom, or the final straw, I guess?
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to be able to relate to that story.
Sure. So what happened was I had been gambling, and I had been gambling way beyond my means, borrowing money from casinos to gamble, very often losing that money, having to pay it back, and staying in that cycle for a long time. And this last time, I basically went to Las Vegas and I borrowed a huge amount of money, and I lost it. I lost it all. And at the end of that weekend, it was just an unbelievably traumatic, horrible experience. It'd be hard to express what it felt like to be in my body, because I couldn't even feel my body through that weekend. And I came back home. I was newly married to my wife, who I'm still married to, thank God. And my life was just in shambles. You know, I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know how to be. Yes, I was 12 years sober. You know, it was kind of like, whoopee, I'm 12 years sober. And I couldn't be less centered, less happy. And I think this is a point that people come to in recovery where they're like, oh, recovery sucks, or the 12 steps don't work. You know, and that wasn't my story. I knew the 12 steps worked because I saw them work in my life. What I knew is I didn't know how to live still. There was something that I had been missing. And my relationship with money and my relationship with women and the feeling that I had generally about myself in my body was so stressful, I knew something was wrong. And so a couple of days later, I went to a concert and we were dancing at the show, and my back went out. And my back basically just had been a problem for the last year or two already, but not like this. This was where you're down for the count. And basically I spent a year, you couldn't call it crippled because I could move, but I couldn't move quickly. I was always in pain. I could only move slowly. And I had to, it took me about a minute to get up out of bed, 60 seconds before I could actually get out of bed. It was just a horrible way of being. And I figured, I don't really know what I've done, but my life as I know it is over. And I went to get an MRI finally. I'd been to healers of every kind, massage therapist, acupuncturist, chiropractic, the whole deal. I got an MRI, finally broke down, and this surgeon and this radiologist read the MRI and they said, you are going to be on drugs for the rest of your life. You have severe herniations at L3, L4, L4, L5. You have severe disc degeneration. And we're going to have to operate on you eventually. And that was my bottom. That moment. That I was, at that point, I was 36 years old. And that was 2003, 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I said to the doctors, there must be some other way. And they said, there's nothing. We've never seen this get better. So a couple of days later, a friend of mine said, if you really want to fix your back, you should go see this man named Guru Prem. Guru Prem. And at the time, I wasn't really interested in seeing someone named Guru Prem.
I can imagine, right?
Not at all. I'm like, Guru Prem, really?
Right.
I'm from New York City. I don't really do gurus, like
right.
Not my thing. But that night, I went out to dinner that same night with my wife, and a woman at the table next to ours, sitting by herself, struck up a conversation with us. And she said, hi, I just came to Los Angeles. And my wife and I were like, oh, well, welcome. What brings you here? And she said, well, I came to see a man named Guru Prem that same night.
Shut up.
And so the universe had spoken loud enough for me to hear it. And the next day I went to go see Guru Prem. It's a long, long story, which I can't get into now. But in 90 days from that day, my back pain went away. And I've never looked back. No drugs, no surgery. I pretty much do whatever I want. I mean, I have to work within the bounds of my body, but I'm not in pain.
Right.
I don't have physical pain like that, and I've never had it since. So it's yoga. It's the breath. It's de-stressing. It's using physical movement to get the stress out of your body and out of your mind. It's a spiritual alignment. And it was the next level of recovery for me. And I spent, essentially I dedicated the next 5 years of my life to an apprenticeship with Guru Prem, learning everything I possibly could. And then for the next 10 years after that, I studied and practiced yoga, breath work, meditation. And it changed my life again, forever. And so all I do is I try and tell people, don't just survive this thing. Don't just focus on not drinking. At first, you'll have to do that. But know that the time is going to come where your recovery is going to shift in such a way that drugs and alcohol won't be the problem anymore. and that you can then focus on learning and growing and apply breath and yoga and meditation to your life and live your life and learn from teachers, and you'll be able to realize your fullest potential in this life. And that's what I wish for everybody. And that's what I'm working on every day myself. I still have to work because I'm a human being, and we have to do it every day. And so when I make mistakes, which is all the time, I have to learn from them. I have to grow from them, try not to repeat them again. I have to forgive myself for not being perfect in this world and for being a human being. And I have to forgive other people the same way I forgive myself. And this is the basis of a life of beauty and magic and wonder and true recovery. And it's available to anybody. And that's what happened for me. That's really my story.
That's amazing. And so you really leaned in to yoga. And what does your life look like today as a result of yoga and breath work? Which, I mean, breath work is such an amazing thing, and there are more and more studies and evidence that proves the effectiveness of a breath work. I mean,
yes. My life today is perfectly imperfect. Yeah. As I was saying, we live in a very strange time right now, as we all know. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of fears, different kinds of fear than maybe we've had to experience before. And one could say that everything has changed in 2020. On the other hand, nothing has changed. Everything has changed. Nothing has changed. I still have to wake up every day. I still have to do a practice to get my mind together. I still have to eat food that nourishes my body. I still have to tend to my responsibilities in my relationships. I have to remain vigilant, not to become stressed, chronically stressed. It doesn't mean stress doesn't come and go. That's okay. There's stresses in our world. But to remain chronically stressed as I was before, I can't afford that. I can't tolerate that in my life. So nothing has changed for me in 2020. Everything has changed. Nothing has changed. All the things that I have to do for my recovery are still in place. They're still in play. They have to be there every day. What I'm noticing a lot in the world is people arguing, fighting, unbelievable division, people poking their nose into other people's business, people poking their nose into other people's belief system. And what I say to everybody is what has been said to me. Mind your own business. Pay attention to your life. Pay attention to your practice and your body. Pay attention to your mind. It's so important. This is the lesson that I have to offer after 29 years of sobriety and after 28 years of yoga and practice and study. Mind your own business. Really put yourself into the inquiry into your own life. Don't get caught up into the insanity, the negativity, and the violence that are in the external world. Instead, choose to bring yourself to a place of peace. And then, from that place of peace, each day, you can engage in the world in a meaningful way, which will be authentic for you. Without that, setting yourself up in a peaceful way, we're going to get more of the same.
Yeah.
We will keep chasing.
I love that. And especially during the pandemic, it's even more important to take care of myself. And to your point, I have to mind my own business, and what other people think of me it's not my concern. I'm just here living in the world, doing the very best that I can to be of service, to take care of myself, to be a good person. So we've got about 5 more minutes before we need to wrap up. So do you want to share a little bit more about Recovery 2.0 and your online community and how people can learn more about you?
Yes. Well, we are a really inclusive and optimistic community of recovery at 𝐼20.com, as you put on the screen here. We have a membership community, and we also have a greater community. We serve anybody who's interested in a holistic approach to recovery from addiction, from any addiction. We have universal meetings, which anyone can access for free at any time at 𝐼20.com/meetings. And those are universal meetings. We have about 25 meetings a week, 7 days a week. You can get to a meeting. So that's very powerful for people.
What is that URL again?
It's 𝐼20.com/meetings. And we have our own meeting format, but it's based on the 12 steps, and it's based on meetings that you might have been to. We include a 5-minute meditation in our meetings. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful group of people who are uniting to recover in that way. We also have online courses throughout the year. I'd say the thing that really for anybody to check out is just sign up for our membership. The first 7 days are free. You cancel at any time. So you can get a 7-day sort of experience of what we're doing at no cost to you. So just check that out. It's just go to 𝐼20.com/join, or you'll find a way to join our membership right off the homepage of 𝐼20.com. And, really what it's about at the end of the day is we emphasize a morning practice for people. We provide those practices. I give a new practice every month. Either I or another recovery expert speaks on Monday Night Live. Tonight is Monday. I'm giving a presentation tonight in our membership. It is called The Yoga of Politics. And it is the furthest thing. It is the furthest thing from a political conversation. It's called The Yoga of Politics. And so if you're in our membership, or if you want to join today, again, it's free for the first 7 days. Just come and then see that talk tonight. Every Monday night of the year, we present live. Every Tuesday, we have our resident therapist, Heather Monroe, an incredible therapist. She presents live. Every Wednesday morning, I teach a live yoga class, or another yoga teacher does. And every Thursday evening, I do a special live coaching with our members. Anybody who wants to come, it's group coaching. People ask questions, and we go back and forth, and we get into that stuff. So this is all available for basically, I think it's less than $1 a day in our membership, and it's just really incredible. And so I hope you all will take advantage of what's there. Or if you're not interested in our membership, just go online and go to our podcast or go to YouTube, and you can find so many free resources there which will be helpful to your recovery. So there's something for everybody.
Awesome, Tommy. That was you're doing amazing work. You're helping a lot of people, and really enjoyed getting to chat with you today. I got a lot out of it. And I the one thing I wanted to mention, I know you need to leave in 1 minute. The 12 steps has meant everything in the world to me. However, all of the other things have been such a massive compliment, including yoga, breath work, red light therapy, ice baths, eating good, high quality, healthy food that's anti-inflammatory, right? Yes. I do triathlons. I have so many different communities. I'm going over to F45 right now. It's like all of these different things that I do. So for anybody out there that's in recovery, it's like just focusing on not drinking and not doing drugs is a great place to start. However, all of these, there's so much more out there for you, because we've got to replace the old behaviors and the old lifestyle habits with new healthy lifestyle habits that promote our recovery. So Tommy, thanks again so much. Really great to see you. I'm looking forward to your yoga retreats when those are back up and running, and we can talk about those later. But anybody out there, I would definitely encourage you to join Tommy's online community. Tommy, thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tim, so much.